Do stay tuned for that. Now, more market action across Asia. We're going to head over to Francis Yoon with the stories. Francis.
Hey there, Elliot. Asian stocks rising for a second day, and material and industrial groups are leading the gains today in trade. And commodities continue to rebound from Tuesday's lows. We see Rio Tinto and POSCO rising more than 3% each in trade, and BHP and Nippon Steel in Japan also rising more than 1% each. And Mitsubishi Electric is leading the gains in the industrial groups on reports it's planning to set up solar power manufacturing facilities in the U.S. and Europe, and that's raising shares about more than 7%. And we see Komatsu in Japan also rising as much as 4% in trade, and that company gets most of its revenue from supplying construction and mining equipment. We also see Hyundai Heavy in South Korea also rising by 3%. And this is a story you'll only see on Bloomberg. We see S&P told Bloomberg that Japan's credit worthiness took a dive in the last 3 years, but that it wasn't enough for the credit agency to lower ratings, which stand at a AA. And that's what S&P's sovereign rating director told Bloomberg, saying Japan's weaker leadership and falling public support made it hard to lower debt. So those are the stories that we're tracking here in Asia. Elliot, it's back to you.
Francis, we're going to cross over to the crisis in Iran now, where there are no signs of a let-up in protests against the re-election of President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. Protesters clashed with riot police again yesterday around Iran's parliament. According to the Associated Press, which cites eyewitnesses, police fired ammunition into the air and beat demonstrators protesting in central Tehran. Some protesters fought back, the AP says. The clashes took place as Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei says the country won't annul the results of the disputed presidential election. Khamenei's remarks come after President Barack Obama this week stepped up criticism of Iran's crackdown on protesters, reacting to the violent confrontations between the government and the opposition. Ahmadinejad's challengers have said the election was rigged. Now, coming up after the break, Mervyn King's at it yet again. The Bank of England governor's been warning that the British government needs to cut the budget deficit or else. Plus, under new management, as the grandson of the founder takes the helm at Toyota, we take a look at what's in store for the world's biggest car maker.
Wake up to the Morning Call. Bernie Lowe and Bloomberg's team of more than 2,000 journalists deliver news you can't afford to miss. Morning Call will go in depth on the biggest stories from Wall Street and tell you what to expect for the day ahead in Asia. Watch Morning Call every weekday. No one covers Asia better than Bloomberg. A merger in Tokyo, a coup in Thailand, a market rally in Shanghai. If it happens in Asia, Bloomberg Television is there. From Mumbai to Melbourne, Tokyo to Taipei, Seoul to Sydney, Bloomberg Television delivers the news where it happens, when it happens. With more than 500 journalists in 30 Asia-Pacific bureaus and more than a dozen live camera locations in the region, no one covers Asia better than Bloomberg.
You're watching Global Connection. Let's take a quick look at the Japanese equity market. Both the Nikkei and the Topix putting on some healthy gains here this morning. We've got there, you can see the Nikkei up more than 2.5%, and also in Tokyo we've got the Topix up by almost the same amount, 2.4% higher this morning. Now, Akio Toyoda gives his first news conference as head of the world's biggest car maker today. We've got Mike Fern, who's been following the story from Tokyo. Mike, what's the Toyota president like to say?
Well, he may tell reporters how he plans to revive sales in North America, Toyota's biggest market. Outgoing President Katsuaki Watanabe told shareholders Tuesday, while sales may rebound in many regions, it's not clear when a recovery in the United States will come. Global output fell 39% last month, the 10th straight monthly drop. Exports were less than half of last year's volume. Toyota may give more details of plans for a new market research planning and advertising unit that he wants to report directly to him. He also wants US executives to report to him in order to have hands-on control of North American marketing.
It takes a little bit of time for Toyota to become a westernized company to put more emphasis on research and development for marketing. So, but this is the first step for the Toyota to be like advanced Western companies.
Okay. Okay. The 53-year-old is the grandson of Toyota's founder. He is the first family member to run the automaker in 14 years.
He will be a great charismatic in the future, but he needs a little more experience for overseas operation. But this time that his overseas experience will be complemented by the in-depth of the management team.
Toyota joins Toyota at a challenging time, the world's biggest car maker forecasting a second year of record losses. Back to you in London.
Okay. Thanks for that, Mike. As the Fed keeps interest rates on hold, Hong Kong's monetary authority has done the same. The HKMA today keeping its base rate at 0.5%. Neighboring Taiwan is likely to keep rates on hold as well when it decides at 5 p.m. local in about 5 hours' time. So, is there going to be a shift in monetary policy here in Asia? Let's get an economist to answer that question for us. Joanna Chua is Chief Asia Economist at Citigroup Global Markets right here in Hong Kong, and she's standing by in the newsroom for us now. Good to have you with us, Joanna. The key point in the Fed statement is it's expecting inflation to be subdued, but they also removed an earlier concern about deflation. So how are you interpreting that nuance?
I think definitely it's an interesting development. I mean, certainly there hasn't been any major surprise from the Fed's statement, but it does highlight that some of the deflationary concerns are now easing. And in particular in Asia, in fact, the inflationary pressures here are a little bit more advanced than we are seeing in the developed world, given the effective intermediation of the monetary easing we've seen in this region.
Yeah, inflation concerns have become the simmering theme here in Asia, hasn't it? And you see that in China, Indonesia, and India. Are central banks in the region at a turning point in their monetary policies, you think?
Well, probably not yet this year, but I think, certainly because rates are relatively low and monetary policy is quite accommodative, you've already seen a lot of central banks pretty much done with their rate easing. We probably still have a little bit more residual rate easing from central banks such as in Indonesia, India, maybe Philippines, but pretty much everybody else is done. Now the key question is, when are we going to start talking about an exit strategy from the accommodative monetary policy? And we think that in Asia, that's probably going to be something that will come up by the first half of next year, probably well ahead of the Fed.
But you're expecting the Reserve Bank of Australia to kick off this rate hiking as soon as December. How come Australia?
Yes, our economist actually has a forecast that he's expecting a rate hike to start by December. In Asia, we actually expect Korea probably will be the earliest by the first quarter. Certainly the last monetary policy statement coming out of BOK was slightly more hawkish than it had been in the past. And then, but certainly after Korea, we probably see India, possibly Indonesia, and probably China won't start till probably second half of next year. The key thing to watch out for really, especially in Asia, is what happens to commodity prices. oil prices have gone up quite a bit, but food prices have been relatively subdued. Now, food prices is a much more important component of the CPI basket in Asia than oil. But certainly, to the extent that fuel prices the commodity prices have now turned, and the month-on-month impact on inflation will become positive, and the base effect, which has been very, very favorable to headline inflation in Asia, and will likely remain very favorable throughout the next couple of months, is going to start turning by the end of the year and early next year.
Joanna, it's Elliot
I think there's going to be some talk about that.
Joanna, it's Elliot in London.
Yes.
Just a very quick question. The OECD in Paris have been talking about Asia importing the loose monetary policies from the West as all this liquidity finds its way over there. What are you seeing out there?
That's exactly what is actually happening. We've actually had a very substantial amount of capital inflow going into Asia, and that's actually fueling a reflation of assets. We're seeing that in equity, we're seeing that in certain property markets, and that on the fact that policy rates here are also very, very low. I think that is certainly helping fuel the pressures, at least inflationary expectations might start building up in the next couple of months. And remember, most of the monetary easing has a lagged impact for inflationary expectations and inflationary pressures, which we might see in about 6 to 9 months' time.
Okay, Joanna Chua from Citigroup over there in Asia Pacific, thanks so much for joining us this morning. We're going to turn the focus now to Great Britain, where a political firestorm is brewing between the Prime Minister and the Governor of